I see the real comment, the key thing here is wanting community. You know, the designs, yeah, but it's for that small group of us who want to live in close proximity to one another and share, you know, break bread with one another. Very briefly, I am the president of a not-for-profit organization that I founded about 5 years ago called Intergenerational Strategies. And I've had a career since the early 60s that started in the Peace Corps in Colombia to working with nonprofits and basically as a developer of programs, mediation centers, counseling centers, a whole range of things. And about 5 years ago, I decided that I had enough of the traditional full-time work, and I decided to create this organization and give me more flexibility without the pressures of worrying about budgets and payrolls and building, plant management, and all of that stuff. We had 3 intergenerational daycare centers in Suffolk County with a $6 million budget. So I left that all. Created this small group with some foundation money and some fees that I get from time to time for helping organizations do what they want to do. Our interests are in a couple of areas. We see the aging of Long Island as a tremendous opportunity. A lot of people see it as you know, fraught with dangers. The old people are going to bankrupt the young people and all of that stuff. Well, we have a different point of view about that. We express it. I've done about 8 op-eds in Newsday over the last few years. There was one this past Friday about home sharing, which is one of the programs I want to touch on. And we feel our priority is to help people live in their communities, in their neighborhoods, in their own houses as long as possible. And with the aging of Long Island, you're going to have more and more people in dilemmas, you know, as they develop, get into their late 70s, into their 80s, and have chronic illnesses. And so the question is you know, how long can they continue to live independently? The cost of nursing homes and assisted living is prohibitive for you know, most people, working people on Long Island. So, so our areas of interest are home sharing, co-housing, and something that I also want to touch on. It's the development of self-funded villages of people. Kind of modeled on something that's happening up in Boston that's proliferating around the country now. It started in Beacon Hill in Boston and now is in dozens of communities. It was fascinating. 2 summers ago I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The National Cohousing Association had its annual conference, and I was fascinated by what I saw on the internet about cohousing, and I decided to, you know, spend a few dollars and go down there for 3 days. And I came back, you know, a believer, and basically with an idea of doing an unpaid feasibility study to see whether I could help to establish a co-housing community on Long Island. There you go. What is co-housing? This is a firm from up in Massachusetts that has provided services to a lot of co-housing communities around the country, especially in the Northeast. And thanks to Kraus Fitch, I'm using, there's several of these PowerPoints, I'm using theirs. Okay, it's a form of intentional community that was imported to the U.S. from Denmark in the late 80s. It provides the privacy we're accustomed to with the community we seek. Some people that I talked to in North Carolina basically said, I wanted to move into a community, not a house. So what you're going to see is what's typical. There's a common house. The homes could be what you envision, what you'll see on Long Island as townhouses or condos, or they could be freestanding single-family homes, but they're close to one another. They're not on your quarter of an acre, your half an acre, whatever, so they require greater density in all cases. As you'll see, there are co-housing communities in urban areas, suburban areas, and rural. So don't think of commune in the woods. Some of them are like that, but there's one in Cambridge, Massachusetts, right downtown. Okay, so it can be done building above a village, a Babylon or a Valley Stream or whatever. It could be anywhere. So there's a common house where there are activities that people can enjoy among one another. They can share meals. They can decide, for the sake of discussion, that Friday nights we're going to take turns preparing supper. They can do it every night if they want. They can do it. They can never do it. But the point, which brings up one of the most fundamental parts of co-housing, it is community controlled, and it's community controlled right from the very design of the site plan, so that the folks are deciding how many units to build, what's the size of the common house, is there an organic garden, is there, where are the streets, where are the parking, all of the details, unlike, your condo communities on Long Island, your townhouses, somebody's deciding all that stuff, then you move in, you either buy or you rent. Okay, so it's governed by the residents using what they call a refined consensus decision-making process. And it is much, much more. You're going to see in some of these slides, some shots of co-housing communities. So you're trying to create a village. Some co-housing, most co-housing is intergenerational, but some, most recently in the last few years, are elder co-housing. The folks over 50, 55 and say, listen, I want to live in an age-restricted community, but I want it to be green, I want it to be democratic, all of the things that are in co-housing, but I want, I don't want kids running around. I don't promote that. Intergenerational strategies, of course, but the type of village that really does raise children and where people spontaneously socialize and eat together. As you're going to see, so this is like a common house. It's the meeting room, it's the dining room. Some common houses have guest rooms, so that in your individual unit, you have bedrooms and living rooms and dining rooms and all of those things. So if you want to be a loner in a co-housing community, you can. But when you feel like it, you can go outside into oftentimes they're in a horseshoe. The townhouses, the condos, the buildings, and then in the middle is a common area. The garages are behind the units. So you don't have garages facing one another. You're enhancing the likelihood that you're going to get to know your neighbors, okay? That it's built into the fabric, into the very design. And when people move into a co-housing community, they know up front whether this is for them or not, or they're going to find out pretty quickly. That they can have the privacy. That's what some of the people said. Are you giving up your privacy? Well, if you want to give up your privacy, you can. And if you want to be very social, you got that too. It's the best of both worlds. I don't live in an age-restricted community, but I live in a condo community. And I have nothing to do with my neighbors. It's not what I had hoped it would be. People find many reasons in a co-housing environment to come together, to celebrate, share traditions. This is somebody's living room. So they make the rooms smaller. They run from 1,000 square foot to 2,000 square foot per unit. Okay, and those are critical decisions up front. How many studios? How many one bedroom? How many two? How many three? Okay, very important decisions. Family, you're going to be able to accommodate families, single people, all of those kinds of things. Usually self-managed and maintained. In other words, they usually don't hire a property manager. They, the folk, they economize and do a lot of the sweat equity themselves. So there are places where people work together, enrich their lives, improve the environment, easy to share. Generally, what I heard is they are, what's the term? Their environmental impact is 30 to 40% lower than comparable, traditional units. I forgot some of the technical things, like, there's more shared walls, between the units. Some of them use cogeneration, some, of course, solar, other, cogeneration. That's built into the whole philosophy. That this is one of the reasons why people move into these places. You can always find someone to help and ensure. And this is part of what I like, that whole concept of community. As you get older and, and you have a disability, and the odds on some, of support systems being right there. You help me with this, I'll help you with that. The group may decide, a community may decide, everybody's not going to have their own washing machines. We're going to have, X amount of washing machines at the common house, and you go there to wash. That's a decision. Mixed use with commercial spaces. Some of them have a core or completely of artists, and their common house has the what do you call them? The art studios that are shared. Some have psychotherapists, and and they have their psychotherapy offices, within the in private room within the co-housing. And these people would pay rent, for the use, and that becomes part of the income. The way these things have evolved over the years is that you and I talk about this, yes, and then we talk with a few other people, and it usually takes a year to 2 years of conversations to see whether we want to live, close to one another. Because if that's not there within the core people, then there are going to be problems, because it's going to grow and grow and grow, and part of the underlying thing is that there are shared values towards green, towards democracy, towards justice, towards, so communities decide, for the sake of discussion, right within their bylaws. In order to live here, you have to commit, hypothetically, 1 day a week to the community. 1 day a month, 2 days a month. That's part of it. If you don't want it, if you're not willing to do that, you're not going to be green, etc., then this isn't the place for you. It's not for everybody, obviously. It's clustered, pedestrian, common house. So you see now, some designs, they often have porches in the front for people to sit, like in the old days, so to speak. This is one, I believe this one is in Canada. This in Seattle. You see, probably this is the walkway to the common house. And people are going to, either say hello or kind of stonewall one another. Some of them basically use a, what would you call it, like in a mall, if you will, it's an enclosed area, and that's the common area, okay? And then the apartments are on the sides of it. And then in one that you'll see, parking is downstairs. Parking on the outside of the community keeps people on the inside safe from traffic. Now you're going to see a lot of these. They're big in Oregon, California, Colorado, but they're in New Jersey, they're in New York State, they're in Massachusetts, Vermont. They're proliferating. One of the things I learned at the conference was that there are developers who are building these co-housing communities and bringing in people at the next stage. In other words, they build some models. You come in, and then you help him finalize the site plan, and then you make all these decisions about, you know, community control and, you know, what your bylaws and all of that for final submission to the Secretary of State. So it's the new way, rather the old way being it's completely from the grassroots up. Now it's, okay, developer, grassroots, work together. And I spoke with people living in that kind of community, and I said, does that lose some of the community essence? They said no. They said no. And what's beautiful about that is the developer is putting the money up to do the construction, whereas in the grassroots model, the folks have got to come up with the money. You know, and they gradually, maybe at the first meeting, nobody's putting any money in, but maybe at the second meeting, everybody's putting $50 into, you know, an account, and the money builds up, and now they got to hire an architect, or hopefully you brought an architect into your, you know, but there's all kinds of committees. You're meeting to death for 2 years, you know, between the architectural aspects, the financial aspects, you know, the psychology of it. You know, it's not simple. It's not simple. This is Echo Village, Ithaca. They bought something like 170, 180 acres, but they don't intend to develop it. Because part of the idea is you don't want to lose the sense of community. And that is felt to be maybe 30, 40 units at most. And a lot of this stuff is 15 units. Okay, it doesn't have to be this whole, and so the concept that I have on Long Island, if and when anything could happen, is you know, clustered, separated, you know, you can see what happens with most developments here. They get killed, you know, for various reasons. So some of them are 2 or 3 acres. 2 or 3 acres. So they're going to keep the community heavily green. And so they're going to put 30 units over here, 30 over here, 30 over here, you know, and that's how they're evolving. And these houses are attached to one another. I see the real comment, the key thing here is wanting community. You know, the designs, yeah, but it's for that small group of us who want to live in close proximity to one another and share, you know, break bread with one another. And that's one of the issues is, can somebody buy and then sell for the highest price, you know, get the best price they can? The answer is the person who buys has to share the philosophy. You know, they got to be willing to do the community service, and you know, and you know, so chances are, you know, so what the broad answer is these things have been holding their value. You know, it's been not the best investment, but not a bad investment. But people don't move into this for an investment. Program should happen. Designing is the process of developing written description of your expectations. So you do kind of going through a visioning as to what you would like this to see, and now there's a new job description. There are people, and I met a guy in Washington last week that have lived in these communities, and now you can hire them to help you go through the process. You know, they're generalists that help you with the governance issues and the details of construction and all of that. And the common, you know, the issues of the cost of land, the density requirements, you know, in order to, you can't do this where the density permits only, say, 4 people to the acre. You can't do it. You know, you need 12. Okay? So the way I see it is this is only going to happen if one finds the land, you know, at an affordable price, maybe through a church group or a wealthy person or an educational institution who says, listen, here's a couple of acres, this is a great thing. So if that's one component, then the next component is the community resistance. I don't want a what do you call it, a kibbutz or what do you call it, what's the commune in my community, you know? What happens is, in the grassroots model, you're bringing people together. And now you have, say, 30 people who have bought into this. They've put $1,000 each in, and they're ready to move forward. They're going to the zoning board meetings. And they're saying, listen, you know, we can afford to buy this unit for $300,000, and you know, and we're good. And they become the advocates, politically, if you will, you know, to move this forward, and they have been, in many cases, successful. Okay? Again, the cost of property, the variances, the density requirements, and we see, like in Patchogue, they have relaxed the density requirements to permit some, you know, some housing. So I met with the mayor of what's his name, Paul Pontieri in Patchogue. I spoke with an architect on the East End who's involved in Long Island Progressive Coalition out there, Bill Chaffetz. He would love to do something out there, and his vision was to do it in Sag Harbor above the stores, kind of like, you know, some of these shots that you saw. You know, don't get to, you know, build, build, but have this philosophy. Have this philosophy rather than the traditional landlord-tenant relationship. The other concept is, you know, Yaphank. You know, you're going to build. How about 2 acres of Yaphank? You know, Levy's so-called, you know, new city. It's got to be sustainable financially.
Right.
And so the folks, that's part of the hard decisions that the groups have got to come to grips with. If, for the sake of discussion, they say, well, we're going to build 15 units, and 5 of them are going to be affordable, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Then that means the other 10 got to pay more, you know, and can, you know, whatever they're going to pay has to subsidize those other folks. And sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. Okay, so sometimes this is very middle class. Some developers I spoke to, when I showed them this, and you know, and some of these guys build, say, garden apartments or condos, you know, and fine, some condo communities look like this to some extent, but you know, they're for upper middle class people. The point is, he says, you know, you want to do it like this, I would estimate no more than $300,000, you know, for a 2-bedroom unit. Okay, so that's the ballpark. But some of these are $400,000 or $500,000. Yes. I want to touch on a couple of ideas. If you interview people over the age of 65, 75, and you ask them, where do you want to be living when you're 85? And the answer, over 90% say, in my own home. Okay? They don't want to go to a retirement community. They don't want to move out of town. They don't want to move with the kids. And the strongest argument is, you know, 90% of them want to do this. And so how do we enable that? How do we make that happen? So this is one idea. And I find it fascinating, and to me, this could happen in virtually any community on Long Island. Beacon Hill is a wealthy section of Boston. You know, the brick streets, townhouses, people who could move to Palm Springs tomorrow, you know, and have a home in the Bahamas and whatever. But as they get into their late 70s and the 80s, they say, I don't want to do that. I want to stay here. This is my home. This is my community. I want to stay here as long as possible. And the fact that they have money, please set that aside. Because what they did can be done in Plainview and in Hicksville and in Centeridge. what they did was they said, all right, we got all these people, they pay an annual dues. They created a not-for-profit corporation, like a school, which they control, and they charge one another, in their case, if you're a single individual, $580 a year. And if you're a couple, $780 a year. And if you're low income, they said X percent can be low income, $100 or $150 a year. What do you get for that? The two biggest things you get are the two biggest things that prevent older people from staying at home: shopping and transportation. So they're provided with unlimited transportation to medical appointments, and either we'll take you shopping or we'll do your shopping for you. Above and beyond that, there are other kinds of services, information and referral about, existing services, geriatric case management, helping people negotiate, the long-term care system about nursing homes and home care and assisted living and all of that stuff, exercise walks and visits to the museum and lectures and all of that. But the core of it is shopping and transportation. So people are paying a dues. They started with 0. They now have 4 full-time workers working for them, and they have 100 vendors and suppliers providing the services that they need. Handymen, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, people to walk the dog, on and on and on. So they've created a whole thing, and the vendors must provide discounts to the members in order to be, on their list. Okay, so a plumber charges $40 an hour instead of $75 an hour or whatever. These things are cropping up. The Watergate complex in D.C. has created a community like this. Capitol Hill Village near the Capitol Hill has one. They're in different parts of the country already existing, and they're under development in dozens of other ones. I'd like to help make one happen on Long Island. Okay? And I'm working with a group in Bellport Village right now who's interested, and I'm going to make some presentations to AARP chapters, and I'm looking for champions. I'm looking for that older adult who says, I want to help make this happen. Home sharing. And what it is usually an older adult who owns a single-family home who rents to a younger person who needs affordable rental housing. You'd say, well, boy, you can go into any laundromat, you can go to the college, and you're going to find ta-ta-ta-ta. Criminal background checks are done in both parties. Serious reference checks. The younger person must have a history of stable employment. They are brought together, and then they decide whether to make a match. And they can't make a match until they have had at least 2 visits with one another before making that decision. They pay a modest fee for the service. I don't run this. I did that for 40 years, running organizations. So I brought this to the Family Service League and the Family and Children's Association, 2 reputable nonprofit organizations. They're running it, and they've made 70 matches over the last year and a half.